Hey, welcome to the podcast. I'm Joel here with Dad.
And I'm Rick. Hey, Joel. Let's talk about something.
Yeah, well, I want to do something. I want to start a new series today.
Okay.
Because I finished a book I've been working on for 3 years. It's called Hiking the Clouds. If you're on video there, you can see it. The 7 Waypoints of Mature Faith. It started out as the longest book I've ever written, and it ended up being the shortest book I've ever written. I had this moment where I thought, nobody's going to read this. It's just too long. So I went in and I basically just stripped it down to the basics. The book, a couple things precipitated it. One was we had a podcast that we did. It's the most listened to podcast by loads, more than any other episode, called How to Be Mature. And I was shocked at how that one took off. I was like, wow, people want to know, how do you know if you're mature?
That is interesting.
So I thought, okay, so that's where the subtitle came from.
Okay.
And at the same time, I kept going to these conferences on discipleship, and I'd hear these people would say, here's how you know if someone's fully discipled. And I'd meet these people that were supposedly the examples of a fully discipled individual, and I'd go, they don't remind me much of Jesus. They know a whole lot of Bible. They remind me more of Pharisees, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
They know a whole lot of Bible. They know the right thing. They know who the wrong people are. They know who's doing the wrong thing. They know that they're sinners, right? The important things. But I realized, what a true, by this they'll know you're my disciples if you love one another. The sign of maturity is love. So I started thinking, okay, if that's the case, but yet we kind of gain awareness of, I don't know, like truth comes in waves. That's the other thing I started to realize is, I'm learning truths about the Bible that I've been reading the Bible now for 40 plus years. And I'm getting truths from the Bible now that I go, wow, I never saw that in there. I just never saw it, but I wasn't ready to see it in there. So it's this idea the Holy Spirit reveals truth to us as we're ready for it. That said, I started reading these books on spiritual growth, the stages of spiritual growth. And it's funny, a lot of them said there were basically 7 stages. So I kind of started seeing that. But when I'd read these books, halfway through them, they'd use psychology, they'd use the Bible, they'd use Zen. And halfway through them, they'd take some crazy divergent justification for something that I was like, no, and this is why I think this is okay. I'm like, but the Bible clearly says that's not okay. I'm like, how'd you get from here to there? So I was tracking with them until about halfway through the book. And I thought, okay, if this thing of stages of faith is a real thing, somewhere in the Bible, it's got to be there. I'm laying in bed recovering from my melanoma surgery. I'm reading 2 Peter, and Peter says, basically, his divine power has granted us everything we need for life and godliness. So therefore, add to your faith, virtue, add to your virtue, knowledge, add to your knowledge, self-control, add to your self-control, perseverance or endurance, add to your perseverance, godliness, add to your godliness, brotherly affection, add to your brotherly affection, agape, which at first I thought was how interesting that he separated out the word he used for brotherly affection was Philadelphia, which is brotherly love, from agape. So he's like, there's something different there. And then I started thinking, what if all of these build on each other? What if he says, if all of these are present and operating in increasing measure. So we get in a way. I think there's something we need to be striving for all the time. But I also think there are certain seasons in life where God dedicates to teaching us what that looks like. That's what started this journey. The book, I did it. I finished it. I've sent it out to some folks to read it. And you're one of those that have read it. And one of the things that you and I think very differently. So I always like to hear your thoughts because you think very differently than me.
Okay. So
you started to read it. Give me, first of all, what were your thoughts on the introduction of it, right?
Introduction, yeah. Well, as I mentioned, we were talking about this yesterday, and I mentioned to him, I said, you sort of say things that are sort of in a Yoda kind of a way that I have to stop and go, say, what is he? Oh, he just means this. It's like, I knew that, but you kind of do them in a way that I have to stop and think about it.
Well, okay, so I intentionally did that in this book because I don't want people to think, oh yeah, I know that. I know.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's look at, I remember you were talking to me once about The Road Less Traveled, and that was just a hot book you're really hot on. I thought I'd read it years ago, and I thought, I'll pick that up and read it again. You're really liking it. And like the first sentence of it is, life is suffering. And I thought, that's enough for me. I'm done with that.
This is the greatest truth.
So in this one, you kind of start off with the same thing. The first sentence is in bold, and it says, when faith takes you higher, it often leads you into the clouds. And you compare it to walking in climbing. And I've had that experience of walking in clouds or driving in clouds, and especially walking in clouds. It is really cool. I mean, it's literally cool because you feel the moisture drops and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. But I got to feel most people, when you read this, you're going to go, okay, that's cool physically, but spiritually, I'm not sure I want to be walking in clouds, because that means I really don't know where I'm going. I'm kind of bumbling around and stumbling around. But that surely isn't what you meant, right?
That's what I meant.
I know that's what you meant.
Explain
that.
Yeah, so I mean, well, actually, that's just the summary. I put a summary at the start to frame it up for people. The first line of the book is actually, the higher up a mountain you climb, the greater the likelihood you will find yourself hiking through clouds. The same is true of faith.
Well, okay, so this summary comes before that.
Yeah. Is that all you've read of the book?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Like, we're not going to get very far here if that's all you've read.
I've read 2 other pages.
Okay. Yeah, no. So the first chapter is called Waypoints. So basically, I say that I'm 40 something years into this faith now. I have less certainty than ever, but I have more conviction than ever. And that's what I think. What I mean by that is, as you get higher into kind of levels of faith and you start to realize, there's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect that says that those who know very little are usually the ones who think they know the most about a subject. The ones who truly know the most about a subject go, I don't know everything there is to know about this.
Yeah.
So the Dunning-Kruger effect is this bias that you think you know more than you actually do, and we've all got it. And I think that's the way it is. When you get into the faith, it's the gift that God gives us is certainty, right? Later in the faith, you only have true faith when the certainty has disappeared, but the conviction from the inner experiences, the answers aren't quite as clear as I thought they were, but I'm in, man.
Well, I never heard of that effect, but I had sure seen it in my life, because I thought, man, the more I get to understand the Word and get into the Word and learn it, the more I realize I don't even know. I'm not even sure I understand anything.
We know, enough to know this is the thing.
Yeah, that there's more to it.
Yeah.
I've got the foundation, and I remember hearing what's that guy, the great theologian of the past century, and on his deathbed, his name will come to me tonight at 2 a.m. or something. But on his deathbed, somebody says, "So what's the most profound truth you've ever, in all of your theological studies?" And he said, "Jesus loves me. This I know, for the Bible tells me so." You don't get any deeper than that,
right?
Really, and that, because, well, I guess you get deeper than higher, whatever. But that's the foundation you have to. It's all built on why and all that. So anyway, but I think a lot of people are going to be very troubled by the fact that you're saying you're going to walk in clouds. Because I know, like as a parent, when your kid starts to have questions, parents freak out. Oh, what? They're questioning their faith. No, it's all solid rock. And you go, maybe it's solid rock, but it might be gravel you're trying to walk up.
Yeah,
so you slip a little bit and you fall a little bit. And
I mean, that's the thing. I think we're addicted to certainty more than faith, and so when your certainty starts to get undermined, you start questioning your faith. And I'm like, no, actually, faith doesn't ignore the hard questions.
Yeah,
faith goes, I believe there's something, which is why we'll get to this later, but which is why I say faith isn't belief. I say faith is awareness. And we'll go into that in another topic, like probably the next episode. But I wanted to just get your initial thoughts on the first chapter.
You're talking about faith and certainty. I mean, if you have certainty, you don't need faith.
Yeah, that's
I mean, in Hebrews it says, it's by faith we know the worlds were founded, because you can't prove it.
Right.
You can't prove whether it was founded or exploded or whatever. But by faith we know this. And so, you take the certainty out as soon as you have faith. Because you don't have to have faith if it's absolutely certain. So, and I know that's uncomfortable. Because we want, particularly as pastors and people who are kind of responsible for spiritual lives of others, we don't want them wandering around, kind of wondering. You want, well, this you can count on, this you can count on. But the whole point of your book, it seems to be, is that the further you get into this, the more you realize, I am kind of stumbling along in the clouds a little bit here, and I don't have it all nailed down.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, so the French word for clouds is nuage. The Spanish word is nubes. You think about the word nuance, same root word. Nuance is realizing there's shades to these truths. It's very profound, right? And so when you get into the clouds, you go, oh, there's different shades to this. Yeah.
And it's not always this or this. Sometimes it's this and that.
Yeah. Niels Bohr, the opposite of a false statement is a true statement. The opposite of a profound truth is usually another profound truth, right? Yeah.
You keep coming up with these quotes from people I've never even heard of.
Niels Bohr, he's a famous physicist.
Well, he must be famous in another realm than where I walk.
Well, anyway.
I've never heard of him.
So, okay, we're jumping ahead of ourselves, though.
Are we? Okay.
Basically, my first argument is that spiritual growth happens in phases. And what I think Peter's laying out here is the stages of awakening to spiritual growth. And that's where I think this passage is gold. I think Peter lays it out. You know, the Peter of 2 Peter is not the Peter that was around lopping off ears in Jesus's time. This is a mature Peter, a guy who's grown, a guy who's probably, based on his personality, bumped into a lot of hard, immovable walls in his life of reality. And this is what he's landed on.
Yeah. I think too it's progressive because I years ago I saw, add your faith, virtue, and then to virtue knowledge. And I years ago I realized we kind of get that backwards, because when we get faith, the first thing we want to do is pump them full of knowledge.
Right.
Learn this Bible verse, memorize this verse, learn who Moses' mother-in-law was, all this facts and figures. That's what Sunday school is all about. But really, Jesus spent more time kind of working on here's how to live, instead of explaining what all the scripture means and all the nuances of it. He kind of says, here's how to live, love your neighbor, be kind, blessed are those who are poor. And so,
Which is what the first stage of virtue is. Well, we'll get to that, right? So I unpack, each chapter is an unpacking of this, but I first lay out the idea that faith happens, and maturity really is, maturity in the faith is the apex of maturity is agape.
Yeah.
Have I come to love God and love others unconditionally, which is a kind of a jolting thought I had. You can only love God perfectly when you love him unconditionally, which is a jolting thought, because we love God when he does good for us.
Yeah, for sure.
When we think, well, this is clearly good. God provided my money for my rent. This is good. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
But can you love him when unconditionally, like he loves you, when he doesn't do what you thought he should do?
Yeah.
And that's what I think, to get to that point, you have to shed our image of God, our idolatry, our illusions. Yeah. We have to get to that point, and he's so gracious, he does it slowly for us. Because if we were to shed all of our illusions right now, we would be... I think that's why when Jesus left, he's like, guys, there's a lot more I want to show you, but essentially you can't handle the truth. So I'm sending the Holy Spirit. He's a gentle dude. He's going to guide you in all truth. And basically it's like, as you're ready for it, is what kind of what he's hinting at.
Well, basically what you're talking about was the whole argument in the book of Job. Satan comes and he says, the only reason he loves you, God, you're not really worthy of love. The only reason he loves you is because you give him stuff. And if you stop giving him stuff, then he's not going to love you. Which, some parents feel that way, and they feel like they have to give the kids stuff. Now, grandparents, it's okay if they love us because we give them stuff. But that was the whole thing in Job. It was like God was wanting to prove that no, it's not just because of I'm good to them. And that's where Job, he comes down ultimately saying, hey, God, even if you stab me, though you yourself slay me, I'm going to continue to trust you. And so that's what you were saying. It ties in there perfectly, that it's a matter of you loving him unconditionally, even if he's not giving you the stuff. Do I still trust you? And that's what Job was all about. And sounds like that's what this book kind of starts with anyway, huh?
Yeah, and that's where I kind of, at the start of the book, I've gone into this with a lot of fear and trembling, because I know that in the early stages of faith, you want to go, am I measuring up? Am I there? And I say in this book, this is not a measuring book, like to see where you're at. This is more a reflective. It's not prescriptive, it's reflective. life is lived forward. It can only be understood looking backward, as Kierkegaard said. This is kind of looking back and going, wow, God actually brought me through this stage. I'm not at the top yet. If anything, I'm just past the endurance stage, kind of gone through a dark night of the soul, and I'm kind of like dazed and confused. So at the second half of the book, a lot of it's just, I'm kind of having to depend on those who have gone before and trust them, but I'm having my own personal experience of it. But I say that basically, if you're new to the faith, there's a good chance this book will not resonate with you yet. In fact, I discourage you from reading this book. In early stages of any journey, it's normal to want to measure progress and speed. Am I there yet? This book is not for that purpose. This book will best serve those who are well into their faith journey and serve as mentors, pastors, and counselors for those who are re-examining or wrestling with their faith. Incidentally, those best suited for that role tend to be those who have been in the faith for years but are experiencing or have experienced disillusionment or even maybe a crisis of faith, but they can relate to the word of Peter where Jesus asked if he was going to leave him, and Peter basically says, Lord, where else can I go? You got the words of life. Yeah. And that's what my point is with this, is that I don't want it to be something you look at and go, okay, what do I go? What's next? What's next? But as you look back, you go, oh, and that's the challenge with it too. Usually I've found you can't understand but about one stage ahead of where you're at now. And things in the further stage of faith can seem dangerous, maybe heretical. Obviously there is real heresy out there, but a lot of times we look at that and go, oh, there's no way that's from God, right? Like the idea that, God is also found in darkness. No, he's not. God is found in light. He's also found in darkness. Yeah. He's all things and all. And so you hear that early on and you're like, but I need light, right? We do need light, but he's also found in darkness. So it's that paradox that you grow into. But
again, not one or the other. It is both.
Yeah.
Both. He's found there. Well, of course, David said that, where can I go that you're not there?
Yep. So what's, any thoughts on that first chapter that I need to tighten up? I'm still, this is still a work in progress, but.
Well, we're still, the first chapter, I think the Waypoints is really, because that's like chapter 0. Is that the chapter you're referring to?
Yeah, I didn't want to call it chapter 1. I just called it chapter 0.
Yeah, that's a good, because there's a couple of things. I think we're kind of running out of time on this podcast, but there's a couple of things I would like to point out in chapter 0. If that's
yeah, go for it.
Do it. Okay. Let's see. That's chapter 1. So I went one page too far there. Well, the reflective, not prescriptive. I think that's interesting. In other words, but you already explained it. But let me explain it in English.
In English,
because what this means is, because we're so used to taking a book that's going to tell me what I need to do. And that's what you're saying. This is not telling you what you need to do. That's what he means by prescriptive, I think.
Right. Well, and that's true. It's not, it's not telling you what you need to do. Yeah.
It's just that once you've done it, you can look back on this and go, oh, maybe God was in that time of confusion. Maybe God was in that time when I really didn't know what the right thing to do was, or I sort of stepped out and it worked out okay. One
of my goals is also for it to give you patience for people who are a little earlier in their faith, and you go, what is wrong with them? Well, we're all growing, man. Yeah. You were there too once.
You were there too. Yeah. But when you were there, you thought that was where everybody was supposed to live. And everybody was supposed to live at the virtue state where it's like, do right, don't do wrong.
Yeah.
That's all there is to
Throw out your secular music. I remember I did that. Yeah. All secular music. Throw it out. Burn it.
Which all those things are probably a pretty good idea.
They're absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
They're absolutely necessary. Yeah. Initially.
Yes. Okay. And then later you can go back and pull. So don't burn it. Just kind of hide it. And
I do regret having some books I burned.
Yeah. So do the Nazis. Anyway.
Oh, ouch.
So moving right along. No, I think it's going to be I think it's a great book. I have not finished it yet, as you know. We just gave it to me a couple days ago. But I think it's going to be challenging, particularly for folk. Like you say, you kind of don't recommend it for folks who are kind of new in the walk.
Yeah.
It's going to be particularly challenging for those. But I think here's who's really going to be challenging for too, those of us who've maybe been walking in the way a while and we've not had our theological cage rattled in a little while. Because it's so easy to think, okay, I got this in order. I prayed the prayer. I don't smoke, chew, and go with girls that do. I witness when I get a chance, and that's pretty much it. And then I go to church, and of course I tithe. That's all there is to it. That's it.
That's literally
as long as I check
just the start.
If I check those 5 boxes off, I'm good. And then of course you kind of have to act like you like people. I don't have to like them, but I have to love them. What? That's okay. I think that's a big cop out.
So you are concerned I'm going to rattle people's cage with this sucker.
I'm not concerned that you are, because I think we all need our cage rattled now and then. Because again, it's so easy to think, I got this all wrapped up. Here's my little box. I have God right in it. I know exactly how this all works. And we don't know really the first thing about it. But he knows everything about us. So we can trust in that.
Thanks for listening. Please consider sharing this with your friends on the platform of your choice. For more from Joël Malm, visit joelmalm.com. For more from Rick Malm, visit rickmalm.com. Our podcast music was produced by Alex Burleson.